URC Power Rankings for the final week, round 18. They're all in the bag. We've got 4 quarterfinals lined up in this competition in its inaugural year. Power Rankings have been a bit all over the shop, to be fair. We stopped doing them for ages while some teams were still playing, other teams were having breaks. COVID very disrupted, but we'll see how we go. I'm not entirely happy with the way the Power Rankings go. Ultimately, they are just a bit of fun, so I won't get too upset if they look funny, but yeah, hopefully next year we can find a way to get them a bit better. But it's kind of hard sometimes when teams don't necessarily put out their best team for the URC comp, suffer a loss, and then their big boys come back and get a big win. I'm looking at you, Leinster, but anyway, 16th, Zebre. They only had one win this season, so it's going to be hard to put them anywhere else. They did push Connacht close in their last game. I genuinely do feel like Zebre looked better towards the end of the season from the start. That's not hard when they had the season they had, but yeah, they did seem to be maybe coming a little bit more right at the end of the season. They're probably the team I've watched least all year. I did watch them a full game, I don't know, about 3-4 weeks ago, and they certainly seem to be on the improve just before they picked up their first win. So yeah, maybe there's some positive signs towards the end of the season, but they don't finish the season all that well. Cardiff, I said it to somebody in the comments the other day, the season didn't actually start that badly, but the end of the season has been a long time coming, hasn't it? Because it's just been kind of a dire end to the season. I think they finish on a 5-game losing run. Certainly need to reassess, reevaluate, rejig how things are going to go. Because they ended up getting smashed by Benetton in their final game. I think admittedly with a few young players out on that pitch that day, but still, Cardiff season has come to a pretty disappointing close, but we look to next year to see what can happen. Another Welsh team with the Dragons, I've got in at 14th. What can I say? 3-game losing run for the end of the season. For them, they lost to the Lions at home by like 10 points. So not disgraceful, but kind of like Zebre and I guess Cardiff to a degree. It's a pretty forgettable season for them. They've still got some good players, but it's just the depth, I think, where they struggle. So we will see how any recruitment and whatnot goes. I think they've recruited, didn't they get Rob Evans from Scarlets? So we'll see how the Dragons line up for next year. And lastly, Benetton in at 13th. They did finish the season with a big old win. Like I said, they smashed Cardiff, but look at where Cardiff are on the power rankings. So how much credit do you give them for that? You give them a bit, but not a heck of a lot. And I think that ended some crazy long winning streak of theirs as well. So, yeah, I think these 4 teams pretty clearly had the worst seasons of all the teams in the URC. There's a kind of middling area with some of the other teams who finished with somewhat better records than this lot. Interestingly, Glasgow have come out in 12th, which seems crazy because they actually ended up making the playoffs. I guess some would argue they were kind of helped in their cause by a couple of games against Zebre and a couple of games against Benetton, which is more than the other teams in the other kind of shield groups have. I think they finished their run 3 games on the trot losing, so I've got them down a whopping 4 spots, which seems like too much. I think they had like a 17-point loss to Edinburgh, albeit away from home. So are they a form side going into the quarterfinals? No. Do they have to go and play Leinster? Yes. Is that going to be one they're going to get close? Probably not. I mean, anything can happen in sports. 80 minutes, it only takes them to have a game out of their skins and another team to have an off day, but it's a big ask. It is a big ask for the Glasgow boys, but still, they are alive, which is more than what we can say for the Scarlets, whose season was pretty mixed. I mean, they lost their last 2 when they really needed to make a push for the playoffs. They needed to push for that kind of Welsh Shield and Champions Cup spot. They needed to finish the season on a high. They were a bit disappointing. They've kind of showed some flashes of brilliance under Dwayne Peel, but there's also been some games that look back and go, man, we were pretty disappointing. So, yeah, down 2 spots, home loss to the Stormers. The Stormers are on a hell of a winning run, so There's no shame in that. They only lost it by a pretty narrow margin and very late on. So, yeah, Scarlets are 11th. The Ospreys, I've got down 3. They were another side that finished losing their last game, also at home to a South African team in the Bulls. I think they won 2 of their last 5, which is, again, is not the great record that you needed to go on to push for the playoffs. Like, they didn't miss the playoffs by that much. Their record was decent, but too few bonus points, I think, cost the Ospreys in their season. So down 3 spots for them. And one team that finished the season much better than they started, albeit they did open the campaign with a win. The Lions, I think, definitely improved as the season went on. Once they got home, they certainly looked a lot better. They finished up 3 spots with that win over the Dragons. They won, I think, like 6 of their last 8. So the power rankings are supposed to show more recent results, and I guess a lot of the South African teams were at home towards the tail end of the season. They started at the bottom of the board because they had to tour Europe for a long period. They finish at home and maybe get buffed up a little bit. But yeah, the Lions, there's certainly something to cheer about after, as I said, a pretty tough start to the season. So there we go. That's the bottom half. Connacht, who finished outside the playoffs, I've got in 8th on the power rankings. I think they won 3 of their last 5, so it's kind of a decent record for them. They seriously look like a team who on their day could beat anybody and on their day could also lose to anybody. They've almost lost their last game to Zebre after being in a pretty comfortable position. But as I said, Zebre looked better. They've pushed a couple of teams towards the end of the season and did get that 1 win. So a win over Zebre now is certainly, I think, worth a bit more than a win over Zebre half a year ago. But still, maybe that's why they don't make the playoffs. You need to be smashing a team like Zebre if you're a playoff team, but they're also not helped by the fact that they have to play Leinster twice, Munster twice, Ulster twice, instead of Zebre twice, Benetton twice, kind of thing. You know what I mean? So there you go. Connacht are in 8th. Edinburgh, who's another playoff team, I've got in 7th. I was having a look at their record the other day, and they've capitalised a wee bit on some easier games at the start of the season. They did lose some of the big hitting games that they needed to win. They are going to face the Stormers away from home, which seems like a pretty uphill task. But if memory serves, Edinburgh were one of the few teams to get a win in South Africa. So, again, stranger things have happened. It looks like a tough ask. The Stormers are on a heck of a run. Edinburgh's won 3 of their last 6. It was a solid win over Glasgow at home. They're up 3 spots on the power rankings, so they'll give themselves a chance, but they will certainly be underdogs. Munster, I've got in 6th. Disappointing end to the season for them. They would have liked to have beaten kind of an understrength Leinster side, albeit away from home. Not that many sides go into Dublin and have much luck. So Munster's down a spot. They've kind of finished the season in a bit of an inconsistent fashion. A loss was their last result. I think they had 2 wins before that and then a loss. It's kind of, I don't know, lacking that big run that some of the other teams have gone on towards the tail end of the season. So, again, they're still in with a shout. They've got to face Ulster in their quarterfinal, so that should be one of the closer games, I would imagine. Both sides will be backing themselves, but we'll wait a few weeks for that one. Speaking of Ulster, I've got them in 5th. They'll be disappointed with the way their season ended. I think they won their last 2 after kind of having a bit of a disappointing run of their own. But, if they're bouncing back, they're doing it at the right time, right? The business end of the season. They beat the Sharks, who in themselves had been in really good form. So there's there's a bit of meaning in that, the fact they got that win. Hard fought. The Sharks came back, but their game against Munster, like I mentioned, is going to be a pretty interesting one. Leinster, I've got in 4th. Now, like I mentioned, these guys bugger up my power rankings when they send a less than full strength team to South Africa and lose a couple of games because I have to drop them. But ultimately, if Leinster plays their first team, I think to rank them anywhere but first is kind of nuts. But we will see. We'll see what kind of team the Leinster decide to field once the Champions Cup's done and dusted. Anyone beating them is going to have to be pretty bloody good because, like I mentioned, the Leinster team is formidable. That's the same spot they've got in the power rankings as last time. They ended a 2-game losing run in the URC, if you can believe that or not, with their home win over Munster, 10-point win. 3 teams left, and they're all South African. The Sharks are in third. That New Jersey hanging in the background, looking pretty tidy. They did lose, so they're down a spot. A close away loss to Ulster, but ultimately they've also won 6 of their last 8, so they've been in good form. Like I mentioned, they've been at home. Like all the South African teams looked really formidable at home, and then we've seen them in that last round travel. Sharks lost, the Bulls won, the Lions won, and the Stormers won, but it wasn't as convincing, right? So it's going to be harder if any of these teams have to go on the road. I mean, the Sharks have got an away game in their quarterfinal, but it's against the Bulls, so that's going to be pretty tasty. Speaking of the Bulls, they are in second, so they are up a spot. Solid away win over the Ospreys. Like, they didn't destroy the Ospreys, but they beat them. So that's a good improvement, I guess, from the start of the season. The games in Europe, which were a bit tougher. These guys have acclimatized. They've got themselves into the competition. I think the Bulls have won something like 7 of their last 8. So they are in cracking form and will be giving themselves a chance. Like I mentioned, they play the Sharks. And then the Stormers have got at number 1. If I'm not mistaken, it's 8 wins on the bounce for them. Albeit unconvincing against the Scarlets away from home, but it's still an away win in Europe. Like, that's the thing as this URC progresses. I've been looking at the numbers, and like, not many teams got away wins in South Africa, and the South African teams didn't do that well away from home. So that's going to be an interesting trend to track. I'm still finishing up the numbers. I'll look forward to having a look at what the actual results were, kind of between I guess conference against conference. I want to look at those numbers to see who did well and kind of who struggled. But my cursory look just showed traveling to South Africa is tough and vice versa. So we will see how things go, folks, in the quarterfinals. Like I mentioned, the power rankings are what they are. There's certainly some teams who've kind of been a little bit underrated. Some teams who finished the season strong are higher ranked than teams who started the season well. Leinster in 4th seems nuts, but as I mentioned, they did field a weakened team a few weeks ago and did drop a couple of games, but they still finished pretty comfortably top of the log. So, yeah, you guys let me know your thoughts. We look forward to the quarterfinals. There should be some cracking games, and you guys let me know your thoughts. I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.